I think Judge's value set the market for a lot of these other marquee free agents. We saw that from the Giants. The Giants were reserving money for Judge that didn't go to him, and the Padres as well. So since Judge is off the board, we've had an explosion of moves. So we'll talk about some of those moves and what that means for the Yankees. And let's start with none other than the big bad man, formerly of the Houston Astros, the man who embraces the villain, Carlos Correa. Jake, what do you think of that signing today?
What was that? 13,330, something along those lines.
13 years for 330.
I mean, clearly the Giants at this point were out for blood because they missed out on Judge big time. I think they missed out on a few other guys. Like Trey Turner was a guy that they might have been looking at briefly early on, but that was obviously not going to happen when they were still all eyes on Judge. It just felt like they were due for that one big splash, and God, was this it? It I think that Correa just matches what they need in terms of like that core piece for the middle of the infield now that Brandon Crawford's kind of at his decline. And we've, funnily enough, kind of heard some rumors, and it's not even real rumors, it's rumblings that Crawford would be a good fit for the Yankees at some point, just as like a little veteran presence. So that's something that we might be able to get into later. But they definitely need that veteran who at the same time is young enough to really build around. And he's going to be there until age 40. He's only 27, 28. So that's a huge piece for them to really work with moving forward.
Yeah, and we look at these big deals, with the new CBA. I think the market is going back up where teams are trying to spread the AAV. They realize, the rate of inflation, the rate of increasing money that the league is making, that AAV, let's do some quick math. Is that over? It's less than 30 a year, right?
Like 28 something,
Yeah.
28 change.
So 28 million. Think of what the Yankees are paying right now for Josh Donaldson, right?
I don't want to.
Um, so in 10 years, Carlos Correa, he's one of the best defensive shortstop talents we've ever seen. He is
Yeah.
a pretty solid hitter. The last 2 years, he's had pretty plus offensive seasons. He's really budding into his own, for all the hate he gets from the Yankees fans and from some of maybe not necessarily out of touch, but just trying too hard comments in the media. He's really well liked by teammates. In 10 years, Carlos Correa, with the defensive tools that he has, is going to be, he doesn't rely on speed or immense strength necessarily. He has really good mechanics. Carlos Correa, I think, can be a gold glove third baseman at 36, 37 years old, 10 years down in this deal. And when the Giants are paying him $28 million a year, it's not going to seem like a little bit of money. 28, I can't, as a thousandaire myself, I can't tell you that $28 million is not a lot of money,
So it's
but
actually just under, it's 25 point something. And
25.
yeah.
So Alex Rodriguez was getting paid $25 million a year, and that was massive 10, 15 years ago. And
Yeah.
that was the biggest contract at the time. I think Carlos Correa doesn't have the high end potential of A-Rod, but in terms of being a solid contact hitter, someone who can hit anywhere between one and I mean he can hit anywhere between 1 and 9, obviously, but 1 to 6 in your lineup and be a plus wherever he's put, maybe not the fourth hitter in terms of power. Um, this is a rare time where I really like the entire duration of this contract. And
Yeah.
credit to Correa for betting on himself last year, taking that short, 1 year deal with Minnesota. And I kind of feel bad for teasing Minnesota with the thought of this guy long term. But
Yeah.
especially San Francisco is ready to spend. We talked about him with Judge being big players. Them giving out that contract, I like the fit for them and for him.
Absolutely. And like the thing is, Minnesota was really pushing hard for him to come back. They did love him there and they did really see him the same way that the Giants did. But I think that the Giants really kind of flashed their teeth with that Judge offer. And from that point on, it's like pretty evident that once you make that big of an offer to a player, you can't just go the entire offseason without matching that for someone else. Because if you do that, then you are leaving your fans with immense disappointment that is going to linger for a long time. As Yankees fans, we've definitely felt that before. So this was an essential move for them. And I think that he is overall, because you said he's an athletic, dynamic infielder who, honestly, his bat to me reminds me of slightly less pop, but this guy, like, let me know what you think about it. Adrian Beltre,
Yeah,
that type of
less home run power.
yeah,
But yeah, checks
solid like
out.
280 hitter,
Hmm.
285, 850 OPS. I'll take that any day of the week. Um, so he's going to be a very, very strong piece for them for a long time.
Correa's career OPSs in full seasons. Um, 2015, 100 games, 135 OPS plus, followed by 124, 155 asterisk on that 2017 year. We'll see. He was injured for a lot of 2018 and 2019. In 2020, he had a bad year, but then another resurgence, 131 in 2021, 140 last year in 136 games with Minnesota. He was really good. I think Jeremy Pena, the current shortstop for the Astros, talks about Correa being like an essential mentor for him in spring
Yeah.
training, in a lot of the off season, like bringing him out to work on his glove, and obviously it worked with Pena. I like this investment for San Francisco, and like you said, Judge set the market, and the Giants showed their hand. And when Scott Boras is your agent, and you have teams openly bidding on Aaron Judge, it's hard to it kind of blew the Twins out of the water with what the Giants showed they could do, and what Boris goes to them and says, "You have this money. Why don't you spend it on my client?" And that's where we can pivot to Xander Bogaerts going
Yeah.
to the San Diego Padres, another big shortstop where the Padres blew the next team, especially the Red Sox, out of the water with that deal.
Dude, that was what 11 years 280, I believe, was the final number, which is I don't think anyone was expecting Xander to get that number, even though he's been criminally underrated for a long time. This is a hard hit for the Red Sox fans to swallow, and I think the entire organization is going to feel it reverberate for a minute now. Think of what happened with Mookie when he left. They got Verdugo back, and no offense to Verdugo, great player, but at the same time, the return simply has not been worth it. So the fact that they just let him walk without getting anything for him is quite disappointing in that sense. So they're going to really have to compensate through the trade market. But man, the Padres, they really another team that went hard after Judge, and we weren't really expecting that. It makes sense just because Preller is a madman, and the entire ownership, I think, at this point, just wants to burn the world down. But there was a rumbling of them offering Judge 14 years, I think, at one point, and or they were on the cusp of doing so, just to try to distribute the money right. And that would have probably been shut down just because that's unheard of. But man, this team, they whiffed on Judge, they whiff on Trey Turner for also a multiple year I think it was like 11 years as well. Dude, that was going to be 41 at the end of that. So they were another team that just wanted to stockpile the middle infield and make them as strong as possible, especially with Tatis on the shelf for the at least the first half of the season, I believe. And he could still like there's always a chance he gets moved just because they have a surplus at this point of talented middle infielders. And if he really shows an unwillingness to go to the outfield, I can easily see him being moved.
Yeah, the Padres, I saw a video a bit earlier. I think their 2009 or 2010 opening day payroll was $36.2 million
Yep.
total. They were second to last in MLB. Now they're pre-arbitration. I believe it's pre-arb. It could be projected arb or doesn't include arbitration. $213 million on opening day next year, which is right now the third highest guaranteed in baseball.
Yeah.
So I respect the Padres for going out. They're not a huge market. They have an owner who wants to spend money. He's not among the 5 or 10 richest owners in baseball, but he knows he has a ton of money and he's spending it. He's investing in the team. This team is fun. They're doing the old adage of travel team baseball where you play with 6 shortstops. Those 6 shortstops being Xander Bogaerts, who apparently is going to play shortstop, Ha-Seong Kim, who was a really good defensive shortstop last year, at one in Tatis's place. At first base, Jake Cronenworth can play shortstop, has played shortstop for the Padres in the past, and is a plus plus defensive second baseman, and is a plus defensive shortstop. Manny Machado, who played shortstop to get himself a contract and is one of the best defenders at third base in modern history, if not ever. and Fernando Tatis, whose job was his in 2020 and all of 2021, and then he's lost it this year, and now he could be fourth or fifth on the depth chart for playing short.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll see what happens with Tatis. Is he an outfielder long term? Is he a Padre long term? We've heard some Yankees rumors there. What do you think of the Yankees rumors for Tatis?
So it's really funny because we were actually talking about this before the rumors like actually got out in the stratosphere. I just had this crazy thought like, oh, what's this bigger move going to be? Like my brain just couldn't help but speculate. And obviously, I didn't have any insider news or anything like that. But I just had a feeling. I was like, Trout doesn't really make sense. Ohtani would make sense, but I just don't think the Angels are going to try to move him right now. And then Tatis comes to my mind just because he's likely disgruntled at this point with the organization. If you look at his numbers in 2021, they're absolutely absurd. He put up MVP caliber numbers, and like those, if he stays on that path for 15 seasons, he's an easy first ballot Hall of Famer. And then the motorcycle accident happens, and then he gets popped for steroids within that same offseason or same season. It was in season while he was rehabbing, just trying to probably get stronger, but he used a pretty bullshit excuse. If I'm being honest. So there's clearly some friction within the organization about him because they understand how talented he is. And I can understand why teams would be reluctant to move to like trade for him. But at the same time, there's so much upside there. And the 13-year contract does look daunting, but if you look into it, the numbers are not that insane. I think he's making less than 30 million a year AAV. And if he were to hit the free agent market right now without the injury or steroid history, even with like the injury history, he'd probably be getting at least 35 to 40 million just based off those numbers alone. We're talking about similar to Juan Soto. So, man, I would be thrilled if they got him. I know that a lot of Yankees fans are very reluctant for that, but any team that were to acquire him, I think would quickly learn that they need to be pulling for this dude.
Yeah, and it's hard to project with Tatis what his role on a team looks like now with the injuries and with the slight, not the slight on his character, with his character issues that he's shown. And those character issues being no, not that he's a bad person necessarily, but it's a lack of professionalism in terms of um knowingly or somehow circumventing your team doctors or whatnot to take allegedly unknowingly performance enhancing substances, right? So whether he was intentionally cheating or he was being dumb and reckless, he violated the rules, as well as not respecting his body or his contract and doing something that a professional athlete who works and needs to covet their body, even as a young person, can't do, getting paid that much money, which was riding a motorcycle. Also, apparently his brother is in tough condition. So prayers out to the Tatis family.
Hopefully he's
Um,
okay.
yeah, but going back to Fernando Jr., I mean, I can't give him a pass on any of this stuff because I understand people who come from humble means, who come from no money and then elevate to this level of stardom and being rich that they don't necessarily mature properly. And that's probably true a little bit for Tatis, but his dad was an MLB professional. He should have that system from when he was a kid, of understanding what it takes to be an MLB player and the seriousness of it. So I I think Tatis might be going rogue on his own. I know before that, part of the reason the Padres can spend so much money is because them being a small market. Tatis was the second or third highest selling jersey in MLB for a good 2 years. You go
Dude,
to the MLB flagship store in New York,
yeah,
there was Judge jerseys up number one, and Tatis were the second most being hung up around. He is a premier face of baseball in the league before this year.
the marketing was insane with him, and then I'm pretty positive he lost his Adidas sponsorship as well.
Yeah.
So that's brutal. But like this is a guy. If you put him in a big market, he's going to bring crowds, and if you put him in a smaller market, he's proven that he could actually bring crowds in as well. So this is a guy that if you're afraid of spending 300 million for 13 years with him, he's going to make all that money back for you in the first 6 years, like easy.
Yeah. And the thing is with Tatis, in New York, it could be an issue. But look at guys who have had that kind of and there was no PEDs on their end, but this kind of persona. Manny Machado and Bryce Harper specifically come to mind of being these young, um, a little, maybe a little aggressive, a little bit reckless on the field, off the field, when they're younger, and they've matured into being massive leaders for their teams. We've seen them, um, really be like that veteran leadership on these teams making deep playoff runs. In this past postseason, it was evident for both Harper and for Machado. We saw at the end of last year, Manny Machado giving some lip to Tatis, telling him to get his head out of his ass, basically, and not sulk. Like you're the best player on this team. You're the best player in the world.
Yeah.
Um, so I don't think I think teams should try and strike now, specifically the Yankees, because I think his value is as low as it will be ever again. And I think it's a quality investment. So
That's what
we
I'm
can,
saying. We don't know what the free agent market's going to look like in 2028 when I think he has his like first opt out. He might have an opt out in 2028. What if he at that point has turned it around completely and he's looking like an Arenado or a Machado or a Harper? What's he going to get AAV at that point? 45 million. We have no clue what that kind of inflation is going to look like. So you might as well get him when he is low. And even though it looks high right now, it really isn't.
yeah, for sure.